Bro and sis talk. You've heard this, right? Surely you have known someone who heavily leans into the bro talk. And I don't hang out with quite as many girls. Like I got my daughters and a few friends and my wife who super love. None of them really use the sister thing a lot, but I use that term, sister, a lot. I like that. I think it's a fun, respectful way to address my female friends. But I had this buddy back in the day, and he's still my friend. But when I met him, I noticed his speech pattern that he would call everybody he was even remotely friendly with, it was a dude. He'd be like, yeah, bro. And I'd heard other people use that kind of bro talk, and I found it to be kind of disingenuous, and so I disavowed it. I didn't really like it. But when I heard him use it, and the way his eyebrows went up in the middle, I was like, oh, I think that guy's a gentle soul. I think he just means it. I think he means like some kind of gesture of, hey, it's not totally conditional with us. Because, brother, sister, that doesn't go away. It's just a thing. People might do mean stuff or bad stuff or be jerks, but brother or sister, it's just, you can't undo that. It's kind of permanent, right? And so gradually I came to look on that with affection, maybe even tried it on myself a few times. But in the end, I think I kind of landed on the occasional use of brother and sister, as we've discussed. But maybe for some of you, you hear that language, brother or sister, in a religious context, or more specifically in a Christian context. And you're like, I don't know, hackles up a little bit there, because maybe you lived through something where those terms at first felt endearing, but gradually you realized you were in kind of a controlling situation, vaguely related sort of to things ostensibly about God, and that brother and sister thing started to feel to you like you can never leave. Or maybe you saw that kind of stuff on some kind of portrayal of like a cult or some weird religious community and TV show or book or something like that. All of that, I suppose, is valid, but the reason that language is loaded and a big deal, and I think worth discussing right here, is one, because it comes up in Matthew 28 in the verse we're going to look at in just a minute, but two, because it is such intimate language to use with one another. It is reminiscent of some of the unconditional covenants we see God making with people. It's like, yeah, I'm your God and you're my person, and even if you screw stuff up, we're going to work that out, but I'm still your God and you're still my person. Further, I also think that language is important because this motif of family is one that is all over the Bible. And think about Matthew and how heavily the family thing fits into this book. In the Old Testament, remember, it's really early on, like right after you get out of the really distant past stuff, you get into Abraham, and we discover that God is going to make a new family out of Abraham, even though he's very old, and it seems like that wouldn't happen. It happens, and then he reiterates this stuff to Isaac and Jacob, who come out of Abraham's line. And you realize, no, God is serious about this. He's going to build up this surprise family coming out of surprise origins, and he's going to make some kind of point here. There's going to be some kind of really rocky up and down relationship, but that relationship is going to be the through line narrative thread that leads us through the Old Testament, and we're going to see the character of God play out against the backdrop of the exploits and ups and downs of this family of faith. Well, then you get to Matthew, and this brother, sister, mother, father, grandparent, grandchild, this family motif is the first thing on display. Remember that opening chapter, or the first chunk of the opening chapter, just feels so infinitely skippable. But remember, this is how Matthew starts his book of the Bible. This is the first thing you're met with after hundreds of years of textual silence. It goes like this: a record of the genealogy of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. Abraham was the father of Isaac, Isaac the father of Jacob, and Jacob the father of Judah and his brothers, Judah the father of, and I could go on and on. The first motif that is introduced here is one that is wrapped in family, or maybe just is explicitly family. So we open Matthew with family, and now we're wrapping up Matthew with family. So the women hurried away, this is Matthew 28:8 and moving forward, from the tomb, afraid yet filled with joy, and ran to the disciples. Suddenly Jesus met them. "Greetings," he said. They came to him, clasped his feet, and worshipped him. Then Jesus said to them, "Do not be afraid. Go and tell my brothers to go to Galilee. there they will see me. Now, the easy point of fixation on Jesus' second sentence back from the grave would be all of the stuff about Galilee, and we've talked about that a little. We're obviously going to talk about it more because the story takes us there. But there is a key word there, and it is brothers. He isn't just threatening to use the language of a new family of faith. He is using it. He isn't just saying, like, in a way, I could think of you like metaphorical brothers. He's introducing a term that both Christians and expressions of religion that are vaguely Christian adjacent have used for the ensuing 2,000 years. And I think if we just fly by it, we're going to be like, oh yeah, brother, sister, people say that kind of stuff at church. But I think if we step back and consider this in the grander context of the whole Bible, like we were just doing, or the grander bookendy context of Matthew, because remember, Matthew loves that stuff. We're at the end of Matthew. We should be looking for the back ends of bookend relationships with the front end themes that were introduced right up front. Well, dang, here it is. There's this whole family of faith, this whole story. And then in Matthew 5:17, Jesus says that he is the fulfillment of all of that. He's the completion, not the abolition, but the completion of all of that stuff. And now he's talking like he's created this new family of faith. But this isn't the only place where this comes up. Remember, in chapter 3, the forerunner to Jesus, his cousin, John the Baptist, he's out baptizing. There's this giant religious movement that happens in the desert of Judea. So we're not in Galilee at this point. We're kind of in an in-between place to the east. And he's out here doing all of this baptizing, and he's saying the same stuff that Jesus is saying, repent for the kingdom of heaven is near. And then the religious leaders, the Pharisees and the Sadducees, this is our introduction to the bad guys. They show up. Well, what's going on? We're kind of in charge of religious movements around here. And so probably some underlings get sent out to the desert and grumbling, stomping around. They go out to where they're baptizing. They don't even say anything yet. They show up and John is like, yeah, I know exactly who you are. And in something that bookends in terms of the structure and just the percentage of the pacing of Matthew, this bookends with Matthew 23. Here, John is going to verbally beat down the religious leaders. And then in chapter 23, Jesus is going to even more so verbally beat down the religious leaders. But John just fires right at him. You brood of vipers, who warned you to flee from the coming wrath? Again, Jesus uses the same kind of language in 23. Produce fruit in keeping with repentance, and don't think you can say to yourselves, well, we have Abraham as our father. I tell you that out of these stones, God can raise up children for Abraham. Now, the axe is already at the root of the tree, and every tree that doesn't produce good fruit will be cut down and thrown into the fire. Yikes! Right out of the gate, we're getting the impression that this new family of faith was the point of the family of faith all along. Not at the expense of Jews, by the way. Good heavens, what a weird couple of weeks it's been with people chirping about Jews. Gross. I continue to marvel that anti-Semitism is even a thing, but my goodness, people keep trying it on and they keep taking their shots. That is not what we are getting from the book of Matthew at all. What we're getting here is a new family of faith that is bigger, that is better, that is more robust, that is more complete, that is the fulfillment and the completion of the initial family of faith that was created. Look, it's not even the abolition of that old family of faith. We don't see that here. Again, like we read in Matthew 5:17, it's the completion, it's the fulfillment. An even more robust expression of family that goes beyond ethnicity, yet still includes ethnicity, while drawing in people from all corners of creation and calling them son and daughter and heir and child. Well, then we go up to chapter 12, and Jesus makes remarks that go now beyond his pointing out that there's a fulfillment and something bigger than the existing ethnic family of Abraham, and he talks about something that's even bigger than his own flesh and blood immediate family. While Jesus was still talking to the crowd, his mother and brothers stood outside wanting to speak to him. They don't get it. They're not resonating with what he's doing. They don't even go in to listen to him speak. Someone told him, your mother and brothers are standing outside wanting to speak to you. He replied to him, who's my mother and who are my brothers? Pointing to his disciples, he said, here are my mother and my brothers. For whoever does the will of my Father in heaven is my brother and sister and mother. And I think that's really where the language that we're seeing driven home in Matthew 28 is introduced. But then we get back to Matthew chapter 28, And we are now reminded with our little jaunt through the Old Testament and through Matthew today that this is not out of the blue language, but that this is heavily weighted language. When risen Jesus says, "Don't be afraid, go and tell my brothers to go to Galilee, there they will see me." When that seal on the tomb was broken, death was defeated. Union with the infinite maker of all things becomes possible through the mediation of Jesus. But now we're also seeing that the new family of faith is established. It's culminated. There's a new thing here. But that's not all we glean from this. That word, brother, that concept of family has certain implications, and we're going to get to that tomorrow. Final thing, today's podcast is brought to you by Samaritan Ministries. It's a community of Christians who come together to help pay each other's medical bills without the use of insurance. My family does this. Part of what we love about it, well, a big thing we love about it is the massive flexibility. One of the things that we have made a lot of use of that we really like about Samaritan is 24/7 access to medical professionals where we can get medical advice or directed to a physical doctor's office. But this helps save money for the whole community. It also gets us care and or answers very, very quickly. I've been talking about this now for a couple of weeks, and I know anything like this really gets into the wheelhouse of how the family works and how the budget works, and it's a big deal. And I think their website does a great job of simply laying out what the proposition is and how it might work for you. So I'd be grateful if you'd go and check out samaritanministries.org/TMBH for more information on that. More on the implications of this brother and sister stuff next time around. I'm Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour podcast. Let's do this again soon.